Millionaire heartbroken over losing family, but a shocking secret brings an unexpected miracle. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be a rich person who has everything in his hands but feels like he has lost everything? If it were you, could money replace family and happiness? Stay until at the end of the story to discover the secret behind the cold door of a luxury villa. Michael Carter, a millionaire who owns a financial empire, sits quietly in his office. Outside, the once vibrant garden is now only covered with weeds. A cold wind blew past, creeping through each window, as if reminding that in this house, the warmth had long since disappeared. 7 years ago, Michael lost his beloved wife, Emily, in an unexpected accident. Since then, his luxurious villa has only been a mausoleum, filled with memories. Pictures of Emily hung on the wall, each frame a reminder that Michael had failed to keep his family together. Michael is so rich that he doesn't need to worry about money, but he cannot buy the most important thing, happiness. What do you think? Is it true that sometimes, the people we love the most are the things we are most powerless to protect? In that cold house, only Michael and his son Ethan remained. Ethan is only 7 years old but is already battling a rare autoimmune disease. The boy was skinny and weak and could only lie in bed every day. The boy's laughter had become strange, and Michael, despite his best efforts, still could not fill the void in his son's heart. One evening, while watching Ethan sleep, Michael whispered, "I'm sorry, Ethan. I wish I could do more." Have you ever felt helpless watching your loved one suffer and not being able to do anything? Please share your thoughts below in the comments section. Then one day, Michael received a file from his assistant. "This is the new candidate for the position of taking care of Ethan, sir. Her name is Grace, and her resume is impressive." Michael glanced at the file without interest. He has replaced 6 people caring for Ethan in the past year. The name Grace doesn't leave any impression. "Okay, let's arrange an interview." But Michael didn't know that interview would change his life forever. That morning, Grace entered Michael Carter's mansion. Young girl with soft brown hair, gentle eyes but exuding determination. Grace is unlike anyone Michael has interviewed before. She wore a simple but elegant dress, in complete contrast to the flashiness of the house. Michael sat in the living room, his face cold and his eyes full of caution. He observed Grace's every move as she sat down, her hands gently clasped together as if to keep calm. "I read your file," Michael began, his voice even. "But records don't tell everything. What makes you think you can take care of Ethan?" That morning, Grace entered Michael Carter's mansion. Young girl with soft brown hair, gentle eyes but exuding determination. Grace is unlike anyone Michael has interviewed before. She wore a simple but elegant dress, in complete contrast to the flashiness of the house. Michael sat in the living room, his face cold and his eyes full of caution. He observed Grace's every move as she sat down, her hands gently clasped together as if to keep calm. "I read your file," Michael began, his voice even. "But records don't tell everything. What makes you think you can take care of Ethan?" Grace smiled slightly, her voice was warm but firm. "I don't just want to care for Ethan, I want to help him feel like he's truly alive, not just existing. I believe that every child, no matter their situation, deserves love and hope." Lead voice. Grace's words were not ordinary answers. They were like rays of light penetrating the heavy air of the room. What do you think? Can a stranger like Grace really do what she says? Michael tilted his head slightly, his eyes sharper. Very good words. But Ethan is not an ordinary child. The boy was weaker than she could imagine. And I don't want another person to give up halfway. Grace looked straight into Michael's eyes, her voice unwavering. I get it. But I'm not here to give up. She walked into Ethan's room, bent down to the boy's eye level and smiled. Hello Ethan, I'm Grace. I brought some books that I think you will like. Do you like adventure? Ethan was shy at first, his big brown eyes quietly looking at Grace. But when she gave him a book with brightly colored pictures, the boy smiled slightly. "A little," Ethan replied, his voice soft. Michael stood outside the door, quietly observing. He didn't know what bothered him more, the ease with which Grace got Ethan to open up, or the strange feeling of seeing his son smile for the first time in months. Grace is more than just a caregiver. She became a breath of fresh air in Michael Carter's house. Every morning, she showed up on time with a bright smile, bringing not only the right medicine and food but also the warmth that Ethan had long lacked. One morning, when Grace brought breakfast to Ethan's room, she revealed a tray of fruit meticulously arranged in the shape of a bunny. Ethan looked up with surprised eyes. "It looks beautiful," he said softly, his eyes shining with a rare hint of joy. "Not only beautiful, but delicious too," Grace replied, placing the tray on the table. "But you have to eat it all because it's doctor's orders." Ethan laughed, a short sound but enough to light up the whole room. Standing from afar, Michael quietly observed. He couldn't remember the last time he heard his son laugh. One afternoon, Grace and Ethan sat in the living room, carefully assembling a model airplane. Michael returned earlier than usual and accidentally encountered this scene. Ethan sat close to Grace, eyes attentive as she guided each step of assembly. "I think this part would look better here," Grace suggested. "No, I think it should be here," Ethan protested, his voice more excited than usual. Michael stood still in the doorway, feeling like he was witnessing something divine. Memories of Emily flashed through the air, how she used to do everything to make Ethan smile, how she filled the house with love. Now, that image is gradually coming to life through Grace. But what Michael didn't expect was that when he entered the room, Grace's eyes looked at him. In her hand was an old photo, a picture of Emily smiling brightly, hugging Ethan as a baby. "How did you get this photo?" Michael asked, his voice cold. Grace looked straight at him, her eyes filled with emotion. "I don't want to hide this, but maybe it's time for you to know. I think I'm Ethan's older sister." Michael was stunned, couldn't believe his ears. Grace's words seemed to awaken every memory about Emily, things that he had never questioned. "That is impossible," he replied, his eyes sharp but his voice somewhat lost. Grace still kept her steady gaze. "I can't be 100% sure, but everything I know led me here." Michael walked quickly into the office, feeling like his whole world was collapsing. Grace's words echoed in his head, "I think I'm Ethan's older sister." He pulled open the drawer and took out an old wooden box containing Emily's mementos. Each item inside carries a memory, from handwritten letters to family photos that he has tried to hold tight as a way of protecting the past. But now, that past is being challenged. What do you think? If you were Michael, would you believe Grace? Or would you say it's just a misunderstanding? "I found this photo in an antique store," she said, handing it to Michael. Michael looked at the photo, young Emily, standing in front of an old house. In the corner of the photo is the handwritten text, "All hope starts here." The line was Emily's, unmistakable. "I don't know why she hid this. Maybe it's because she wants to protect me or Ethan. But I have no intention of causing trouble for your family. I just want to know the truth." Michael looked at Grace, his eyes lost. Questions continuously swirled into his mind. What has Emily been hiding from him? And why did she do that? "Grace, tell me another story," the boy called. Both Michael and Grace turned to look at Ethan, the boy's eyes sparkling with joy as he looked at his unofficial sister. For the first time in years, Michael realized that, whatever the answer, Grace's presence had brought new hope to Ethan. Michael sat in his office, Emily's box of memorabilia on the table. He opened each diary, flipped through each page, looking for answers in each line his wife left behind. Finally, he found a small notebook, with a blue cover, with hastily written words. "I chose to hide everything. Not because I don't love her, but because I want to protect her." But every time I look at Ethan, I wonder, will she have that same smile? Michael paused. Emily's words cut deep into his mind like a knife. He closed the notebook and leaned back in his chair, eyes staring at the ceiling. "Can I come in?" Grace asked, her voice gentle but firm. Michael nodded. Grace walked in and sat across from him, keeping a steady gaze. "I'm not here to demand anything," Grace began. "I just want to help Ethan and find a place in this life. But I understand if you need time." Michael looked at her, his voice lowered. "Emily is everything to me. And over the years, I thought I knew everything about her. But now I realize, maybe she had to make choices that I couldn't understand." Grace smiled slightly, her eyes warm. "She loves you, and I believe she loves me too. She just wants to protect both of us." Michael sat down next to his son, keeping gentle eyes. "Ethan, there's something I want to tell you," Michael said slowly. Ethan looked up, his eyes curious. "Grace is your older sister," he said, his voice trailing off a bit. Ethan looked at Michael, then at Grace. A long silence passed before the boy smiled brightly. "I know. I always felt Grace was special." Michael was stunned, unable to believe that Ethan accepted the truth so easily. Grace laughed lightly, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Ethan." Michael watched Grace and Ethan play, filled with relief and gratitude. He walked over and put his hand on Grace's shoulder. "Thank you for bringing light back to this place." Grace turned back, her eyes full of emotion. "Thank you for accepting me as part of the family. The Carter mansion is no longer a gloomy mausoleum." Laughter, voices, and light from Christmas lights made this place warmer than ever. Michael felt relieved to see Ethan becoming healthier and happier. Grace was more than just a caregiver, she truly became an integral part of their lives. One morning, when sunlight filtered through the window, Ethan ran into the kitchen with a radiant face. "Dad! Grace! Let's make cookies together." Michael looked at his son, his eyes shining at the boy's enthusiasm. He smiled and nodded. "Okay. But Dad is not very good. You will have to teach me." Have you ever felt that such simple moments are the most precious things in life? Share your happy memories in the comments. Grace instructed Ethan to knead the dough, her hands covered in flour, but her face radiant. Michael sat next to him, trying to follow, but was teased by Ethan for his clumsiness. "Dad is not as skillful as you," Michael laughed, pretending to grimace. "It's okay, Dad." Ethan laughed loudly. "Dad is good at other things." The laughter gradually subsided as everyone returned to the living room. Michael sat down in his chair and watched Grace and Ethan play with model airplanes. In that moment, he couldn't help but think about Emily, the person who was once the center of his family. Michael turned to Grace, his voice low. "She would be very proud of you." Grace looked up slightly, her eyes surprised. "You think so?" Michael nodded, a slight smile appeared. "Emily is a wonderful mother, and she did what I couldn't," brought a smile to Ethan's face. "That means a lot." Grace looked at Michael, her eyes filled with tears but full of gratitude. "Thank you. But I think the best thing is Ethan. The boy who taught me how to love like I never knew." Footsteps sounded as Michael, Grace, and Ethan walked out into the garden. Ethan carried a bag of seeds, and Grace carried a small shovel. "Today, we will plant flowers," Ethan exclaimed. Michael laughed. "Are you sure? I've never grown plants that lived long." Ethan smiled confidently. "It's okay, Grace and I will teach you." Together they planted the first flowers in the long-forgotten garden. Ethan, with Grace's help, carefully placed each seed in the ground. Michael, for the first time in many years, felt something had changed in his heart, a feeling he thought was lost forever. Every story has an ending, but sometimes the ending is the beginning of a new chapter. Michael, Grace, and Ethan have gone through pain, secrets, and now they face a future. Future full of hope. But can this family really find eternal peace? Listen to the end to fully feel the meaning of this journey. The sound of birds chirping mixed with the sound of leaves rustling in the morning sunlight. A gentle, hopeful atmosphere filled the Carter mansion. That morning, Michael and Grace sat beside Ethan's bed. The boy just had an important checkup, and the doctor brought good news: Ethan is recovering better than expected. The new treatments, along with Grace's love and care, worked miracles. Ethan looked up at his father and sister, smiling brightly. "I feel stronger now. Can we do something fun?" Grace smiled gently. "Why don't you take Dad to the garden? We can continue making model airplanes or taking care of blooming flowers." Michael smiled, looking at his son with pride and gratitude. He no longer felt alone. Do you believe that love and sacrifice can create miracles? Ethan is proof of that. The sound of gentle footsteps on the grass and Ethan's clear laughter rang out as he ran around the garden with Grace. Michael stood from afar, observing the two of them. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought he had lost forever: completeness. He walked up to Grace, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Grace," he said slowly, but his voice was filled with emotion. Grace turned back, a bit surprised. "You don't need to thank me. We are family." Michael nodded slightly. The word family has never had so much meaning. He looked at Grace, for the first time not with suspicion or cold eyes, but with recognition. "You are a part of this place, forever." The background music is gentle and full of emotion. Ethan and Grace's laughter echoed along with Michael's voice. In the evening, the three sat by the fireplace. Ethan proudly held up a picture he had just drawn. On it was a picture of Michael, Grace, and Ethan standing together in the sunlight, hand in hand. "I drew my whole family," Ethan exclaimed. Michael looked at the picture, choked with emotion. He hugged his son in his arms and turned to Grace. "We will do everything to protect this family." Grace nodded, her eyes shining. "That's right. This is where I belong." You see, love and forgiveness can transform a life. Michael, Grace, and Ethan found each other through their trials, and now they are not only a family but also a source of hope for each other. In your opinion, does the Carter family's journey inspire you? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories. Thank you for following and see you in the next story.